Week 5 of the fantasy football season, and here's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. So this season, quarterback's been a tough position. Not a lot of consistent players week in and week out. And even some of the top guys like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts have had some bad games in the early going. And Patrick Mahomes underperforming. First quarterback, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So Lamar, he's been great so far in the early going. This Raven team 2-2 on the season. You know, you can get the rushing upside each and every week. The weapons have improved a little bit in the offense, especially with Derrick Henry in the backfield. It definitely has opened up the passing game. And this week in a division matchup, for big game for both teams. Even though I know it's only week 5, I think Jackson goes into Cincinnati, has another good ball game, and he's my number one option this week. Number 2, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So like I said, with Allen, 2 monster games this season, 1 bad game and 1 mediocre performance last week in the blowout loss at the Baltimore Ravens. But I think Josh Allen bounces back. This is a potential shootout between the Bills and the Houston Texans. And we even saw last week the Jacksonville Jaguars offense kept going up and down the field on Houston's defense. I think Allen bounces back in this one. And like I said, he could put up a big ball game. Number 3 staying in the same game, C.J. Stroud of the Houston Texans. C.J. Stroud, he's a poised quarterback. Last season, what a rookie year was for him. No doubt about it. This week, a pretty decent matchup versus Buffalo. Like I said, last week we saw the Ravens drop 35 points on them. And when you got wide receivers like Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, those are big-time wideouts, and they're going out there and making big plays. So this week versus the Buffalo Bills, I think C.J. Stroud goes out there. And it wouldn't be surprising if he throws for over 300 yards. Once again, number 4, Jayden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. So in only a month of the season, Jayden Daniels is looking like a star and one of the better fantasy quarterbacks with his running ability. And he's just not turning the football over as well. Only 1 interception so far in 4 ball games for Jayden Daniels. So he's getting a lot of rushing yards weekly. He's making plays, and he was the Heisman Trophy winner for a reason. This week, no doubt about it, one of the tougher matchups he's going to face in his early career. Myles Garrett in this Brown defense that could get pressure on Jayden Daniels. But like I said, with his running ability, and now him and Terry McLaurin making some big plays over the last couple weeks where they're getting their rapport down. Daniels is quickly rising up the ranking board weekly. Number 5, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. Last week, he got off to a slow start through 3 interceptions, but second half of that ball game versus tough Minnesota defense, even though I know they had to throw and they played prevented times where they were up 28-0, they only lost 31-29 was the Packers, and Jordan Love spread that football out a lot in that game, thrown for 4 touchdowns and over 300 yards. So this week, a decent matchup at the Rams. Indoor game, this Rams secondary isn't all that great. And like I said, Jordan Love's that quarterback that he spreads that football out, and he's going to get his numbers. We saw Dontayvion Wicks have a breakout game, hot waiver wire pickup this week. Tucker Kraft, well, big game at the tight end position. So Jordan Love with a lot of weapons and just the type of quarterback he is, getting everyone involved. I think this week at the Rams, he has another good game. Picks Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow, he's been solid this season. One of the more consistent and better quarterbacks in fantasy football. This week, definitely a tough matchup with the Ravens coming to town. You know, these division ball games are tightly contested, and sometimes even between these two teams in the mid-teens, low 20s. But Joe Burrow's got his full arsenal of weapons back. Jamar Chase looks like he's back into game shape after sitting out most of training camp. T. Higgins, he's looked decent in the 2 weeks he's returned. Tight end position, Gesicki's been decent for the most part. And in the backfield, I think it's a good 2 tandem with Zach Moss and Chase Brown. So with all those things going his way and Joe Burrow looking healthy this season, I like him once again, even in not the greatest of matchups, to have a good game. Number 7, Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So maybe I'm a little high on Baker than other people. But Baker, 3 out of 4 ball games, he's gone out there and put on performances. And this week, a good matchup at the Falcons. Indoor game Thursday night. Those are usually high-scoring games and a division matchup. And when you got wide receivers like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who are big yard after catch wideouts and go out there and make plays in terms of catching the football, and Rachaad White, it makes his job easier for Baker Mayfield and getting points on the board. So this week, I think he goes out there once again and has a nice ball game. Number 8, Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes definitely dropping down the rankings over the last couple weeks. The numbers haven't been great, and now with Rashee Rice out, his number 1 target in the offense, I don't think Mahomes has enough to be a big-time scorer week in and week out unless Xavier Worthy breaks out like Rice did last season and takes a huge step in the next few weeks. And this week, a pretty tough matchup, the Saints coming to town at Arrowhead. Their defense has been pretty solid all season versus the pass. And like I said, Hollywood Brown has been out the whole season. Rashee Rice now who's out. And Isaiah Pacheco, who's been out over the last few weeks. A lot of big weapons missing in this offense. And Mahomes, his numbers just haven't been great this season. Number 9, Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. Purdy got out of the gate slow the first few weeks of the season, but now things are starting to get going. We saw week 3, him and Jawan Jennings connected on some big plays. Jennings went for 175 and 3 touchdowns. And then last week, good command of the offense. George Kittle returned, Deebo Samuel turned. And this week, a great matchup with the Cardinals coming to town in San Francisco, where their defense can't stop anyone. And we just saw the Commanders, with a weak receiving room for the most part, go in there and just dismantle them 42-14. Number 10, Justin Fields of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Fields coming into the year, he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback, but injury opened up the door for him with Russell Wilson with the calf, and this team's 3-1. Fields, it looks like he's improving each and every week, and he's a better pocket passer than last season in Fields, and he's still running the football, but he's picking his spots and choosing them wisely. So this week, I think it's a good matchup on Sunday night. Dallas Cowboys coming to town. Micah Parsons, I believe he's most likely not going to play in this game, and even if he does, he's not going to be effective. And DeMarcus Lawrence, we know, went on injured reserve with his injury, so he's out minimum 4 weeks. So Fields, like I said, he's getting better each and every week. George Pickens, he's becoming a nice number 1 option for him in the offense. Pat Freiermuth's been pretty decent as well. And I think versus a banged-up Cowboy defense, and not a good Cowboy defense this season, Fields has a nice game. Number 11, Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. So Geno Smith, over the last couple weeks, he's definitely been on the radar as well. And this week, a great matchup with the Giants coming to town. Geno's got great weapons. DK Metcalf, 3 games out of 4, over 100 yards receiving this season. Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's been solid so far in his second year. And Tyler Lockett's still a veteran wideout that could go out there and make plays. And out of the backfield, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, decent pieces as well, catching the football. So with all those weapons on his offense, a new offensive system where it gives him more freedom to throw the football, make bigger plays, and a great matchup this week. Number 12, Sam Darnold of the Minnesota Vikings. Sam Darnold, he's been great this season so far and taking the league by storm after bouncing around the last couple seasons. With the Jets, he was a high draft pick. Then Carolina Panthers traded to, didn't work out there. Then the backup last season with San Francisco. And now the starter after J.J. McCarthy went down. And Darnold 4-0, he's led this Viking team. Great weapons. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, the best all-around wide receiver in pro football. Then Jordan Addison, pretty decent second receiver back in the lineup. And Aaron Jones has been a big help in the backfield. And Darnold spreading the football out. I know this week, tough matchup versus a good Jet defense and also playing in London. But you know Sam Darnold's licking his chops. He wants to stick it to the team that drafted him, even though it didn't work out there and he didn't play well. So this week, even in a tougher matchup, I think Darnold is a top 12 quarterback. 13, Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson last week left the game with a hip injury, didn't return. Joe Flacco came in and played well, and we don't know if Richardson is going to play for sure. It's a day-to-day thing and up in the air, but if he does play, he's on this list at 13, and if he doesn't, obviously he's not on it this week. If he does play in this ball game, good matchup with the Jaguars. Their defense doesn't stop anyone. And the thing with Richardson, he does have good rushing upside, but he's had some bad mistakes so far early going in the season, and he just doesn't throw for a lot of yards, where you're really obviously leaning on him to get a lot of rushing yards, to have a productive day, or at least go for 2 or 3 touchdowns. So this week, if he does play, he most likely won't be 100%, but it's still a good matchup, and he's a fringe option out of the top 12. 14, Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. So far for Murray, 2 good games, 2 bad games on the season. And this week, a tough matchup at the 49ers. I think the defense is starting to kick it into gear after they lost 2 games they should have won versus the Vikings in week 2. And then week 3, blowing that game in Los Angeles where they have no Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua. So Kyler Murray, like I said, maybe he's still not 100% coming off the ACL. Sometimes it takes 2 years to get to that level. And also, we know last week Trey McBride wasn't in the lineup, but Kyler Murray's still with that running upside. But with the tough matchup and the inconsistency so far, I can't rank him high. If he had a better matchup, then he would be a top 10 option, no doubt about it. But this week, I'm down on Murray. 15, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. I'm down on Dak Prescott as well. Last week, I thought he could have had a better ball game. He still went out there. Serviceable ball game, no doubt about it. But Dak usually has a better track record versus the New York Giants. And this week, a tough matchup with the Steelers. I know Joe Flacco looked good in that game, but now going on Sunday night at Pittsburgh, tough place to play over there, obviously. Dak's offensive line's not all that great this season with 2 rookies on the line. And also the running game's been pretty much non-existent, where they're not working a lot of play action and getting the football down the field. So with all those factors and going into a tough environment in Pittsburgh, if you got Dak Prescott, and I understand with all the buys and stuff, I just don't think his ceiling's high in this game. I still could see 15, 20 fantasy points, but nothing more than that. 16, Andy Dalton of the Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton's bounced around the league as a veteran backup over the last few seasons, and he was even with Carolina last year. And Bryce Young, he's been a bust so far. It is what it is. He just can't go out there and perform. And Andy Dalton, with the same weapons that Bryce Young has had, has gone out there, and this offense has been looking good over the last few weeks. Deontay Johnson, he's been a top option just with Andy Dalton in the lineup. And Xavier Leggett's a rookie wide receiver that I think is going to be solid. And this week it is a tough matchup at the Bears, where they're underrated defense, no doubt about it. But I think Dalton could go out there, have a decent performance. If you need someone in a 2-quarterback league, 17, Kirk Cousins of the Atlanta Falcons. Cousins not 100%, no doubt about it. Him and his wideout still not on the same page. We saw Kyle Pitts last week get a goose egg, but Kirk Cousins, he's a veteran quarterback. I think he's going to start getting things going, and this week could be a start on Thursday Night Football versus a banged-up Tampa Bay secondary. And also, we know those Thursday night games are usually high-scoring, and Kirk Cousins the last couple of years has had a good track record on Thursday night. 18, Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Lawrence, it's been a down year for him, no doubt about it. Once again, he signed the monster contract extension in the offseason, but he just can't get anything going. And on paper, they got good weapons. Travis Etienne in the backfield, Tank Bigsby, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis, Evan Ingram, if he returns in this game. But Trevor Lawrence, the most he scored this season's 18 fantasy points. And this week, it's not a horrible matchup, but it's a division matchup. And the ceiling just isn't high for Trevor Lawrence. 19, Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, so far, it hasn't been that great of a year with the New York Jets. And he's another guy that's not 100% like Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles. Maybe he claims he is, or whatever the case may be, but 40 years old, coming off the Achilles, still taking some big hits. We saw last week versus a furious Bronco pass rush. They were getting to him early and often, sacked him 5 times in that game. And this week, another tough defense, and traveling to London on top of it, where Minnesota gets to the quarterback. They create turnovers. Even though you can make some plays and drive the football down the field on Minnesota, it's going to be a tough day for Rodgers, and he don't have much of a ceiling as well, like he even did 3-4 years ago in the 20th and final quarterback on rankings. Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. So Caleb Williams, it's been a tough rookie season the first month of the year for him. This week, I know it's a great matchup on paper versus the Panthers that can't stop anyone, but this offensive line isn't all that great for Chicago, and Caleb Williams has had some bad turnovers early on, which is obviously normal for a young rookie quarterback, but also taking some big hits and holds on to the football at times. So this week, his ceiling isn't as high, even though on paper this offense is loaded. Obviously, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, Swift out of the backfield, but it just hasn't been going right for Caleb Williams. So this week, he's number 20. So that's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking for week 5 of the fantasy football season.